Crbnly conversation.
Quick question. Is this the podcast? Are we doing the podcast right now?
Welcome back, everyone, to another Crbnly conversation. As usual, it's me, Shane, and I've got my buddy Chad here with me tonight, as always.
Hello.
We appreciate everyone's support. If you didn't know, our podcast is where we as friends examine the intersection of community, lifestyles, and consumption. We've created this podcast because we want to give a platform to share our stories in order to motivate actions that lessen our carbon footprint, and as well, build a community of members that can share their Crbnly journeys. And we want to remind everyone out there listening, first-time listeners, avid listeners that's tuned in every episode. We've made it very easy for you to listen to our podcast on any app that you use. All you need to do is scroll down to the show notes, click on find and join the conversation, and that'll give you a link to any podcast platform that you may use to tune into us. And we try to hit you with some new content every Wednesday. This one's coming out a little bit early because of the holiday, and also check us out Instagram. We've got some cool posts there, and you can also see our beautiful faces on our YouTube channel. Just search Crbnly Conversations on YouTube, and we've got some video content there for you as well. But let's get the show on the road. What do you got going for us, Chad?
Well, Shane, I think on today's episode, we're going to explore some of those spooky facts about the effects Halloween has on the environment and how you can try, think, act to be more Crbnly for Halloween. And I know we were talking pre-show about how hard that might be to do it, how hard it is to maybe do that or accomplish that. But before we dig in and share some of those spooky facts, what I would really like to know is, do you have a favorite memory for Halloween?
Yeah, definitely. I just remember as a kid, especially my tween years, 11 to 14 or whatnot, because at about 15 or so, you feel a little too cool to go trick-or-treating. But I just remember meeting up with all my friends in the neighborhood and us just kind of going out as a group. You would start to remember which houses gave the good candy, so you'd make sure to get to them first, and then you knew which house in the neighborhood was giving out apples, so you made sure not to go to them. And then we would also, if a house was giving out something really good, once we made it to the end of the street, some of us, we would just swap masks, and then we'd go back to the same house, to double up on them. But it was just always fun. It was just kind of like a reason to be out with your friends. And of course, at the end of the night, have a bag full. I usually would have a pillowcase or something.
Yeah.
You'd go home and you'd dump out your whole pillowcase of candy and kind of see what you got. And, when my brother was of age to trick or treat, we would kind of swap out things here and there if he had something he didn't like, and, just trade candies with each other. And, and my mom would come in and take her part. She'd make her own little basket with our candy that she liked, so
yeah.
It was good times.
Parent tax.
Yeah, parent tax. So how about you?
Yeah. I can resonate with a lot of those, what you just shared, Shane. But I think the memory that I want to share is, it was just always part of our lives. And it was something that was very social. If that makes sense. And that's what I remember the most. I was actually telling a coworker today that I think until I moved from central Minnesota, where I grew up, to the East Coast, there wasn't many years, if any, that I missed trick-or-treating. I just went whether I had kids or when as a kid, or we used to bring the foreign exchange students trick-or-treating. It's just something we love doing. We dress up and go and do. And as I got older, like going to other friends' house and handing out candy, because not all of us are blessed to live in a neighborhood where trick-or-treating happens. So I think, to me, like that social aspect, and that familiar family feel, just has Halloween has a special place in my heart, in my life, and that's why I think it makes like the title of I think we're gonna go with like spooky sustainability, because when you stop and do some of the research like we have, and we'll go over here with our listeners, is that there's not a lot of sustainable ways to celebrate Halloween. I mean, there is, but it's really hard to do it. But we'll get into that shortly. So thanks for sharing your memory. Like, I'm sure a lot of our memories are rooted, maybe in root canals from too much candy, but like in candy and getting candy as currency for kids.
Seriously.
But for that small, we'll just say sample size of our listeners that doesn't know what Halloween is, we're going to read here just short snippet to help you understand. So every Hallows Eve, the night before All Saints' Day, which is celebrated in Europe and America to this day on November 1st, the Celts held a festival called Samhain, where they would light bonfires, wear costumes, and do all sorts of things out of the norm in attempts to scare off ghosts. The Celts believed that every year on the evening of October 31st, the living and dead were able to walk amongst the same realm of the world. November 1st was known as the New Year to the Celtic region back then. Therefore, the annual attempt to ward off ghosts or other supernatural spirits was also to ensure that the new year would be free of evil. So for those wondering kind of why we have the spooky season of Halloween and all the commercialization around, pumpkins, like fall wear, candy, costumes, like it kind of like ties back to the Celtic tradition, which, I mean, everything we do has probably some tradition or some historical tie back.
Very true.
So
very true.
There you have it, listeners. Halloween exists.
Yep.
We are faced, I would even argue forced, to have to deal with the consequences of it. And how we go about doing that is what we're going to kind of share here on some of the topics.
Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable. Like we both have great memories of this holiday, and we don't expect anyone to stop celebrating it because of the information we're going to provide. It's at the end of the day, it's a great holiday. I think what you said about community really struck a chord with me, because it when you really think about it, it really is a way to get out and kind of bond with your neighbors, and maybe get to know some new neighbors and things like that. So all we're wanting to do is kind of give these facts, and then you as a listener can kind of pick and choose of like, okay, these are some things that maybe I can try next year.
Sure.
To be a little bit more Crbnly during the holidays. And I'll kind of, so costumes is number one. It's all about, other than going out and getting the candy, as you become an adult, it's not really about the candy. It's about like the costumes, going out to your different costume parties and things like that. And it just so happened the other night I went outside to take out my pull my trash out to the curb for garbage pickup, and the lady that lives across the street from me, she comes out of her apartment, and she's dressed like Cruella de Vil from 101 Dalmatians. Sure. And then she's got this huge, like almost life-size stuffed animal of a Dalmatian. And I was just like, man, like, especially we had already been doing this research for this episode, and I was just like, man, like, what is she gonna do with that stuffed animal? Like,
yeah, what does she do
after her Halloween party? She was obviously on the way to a Halloween party, and it's like, she's a grown adult woman. She's not gonna probably keep this huge stuffed animal. So it just hit me, and it's just like, on top of costumes with all the accessories and things like that. It's just so wasteful when you really think about it. Um,
And yet
and
so fun.
so fun, and that's kind of the double-edged sword of Halloween. Is just like she wanted to show up. There's usually at a Halloween party, there's probably like a competition of like best costume and things like that. So people really go all out for their costumes. But we just don't think about it. Like, some of the information is like in the United States, there's almost 12 million pounds of textiles that are created solely for costumes that are wasted every year. A lot of people throw away these costumes. Like, people don't really wear them,
Yeah.
for more
And
than
they're
1
not
year.
built to last. A lot of them,
Exactly.
like especially the kid ones, especially the ones I grew up with. Like if you got more than one usage out of them, you were. I mean, plus you're
Yeah.
putting them on little kids or kids. Kids do things.
Right. And maybe every now and then you take your kid to the grocery store and they want to be Spider-Man and they'll throw on their old Spider-Man costume or something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's very rare, you know what I mean? And on top of that, they just become more and more expensive every year. And it's not like the quality of the fabrics is getting better. 80%, 80%, maybe even more, are created with cheap synthetics like polyester. And, they're non-biodegradable. So you can't really recycle anything from it.
Yeah.
So it's like you
We only
probably,
need so much nylon to produce
yeah,
fake ooze. Like there's just a
exactly.
limit.
So I mean,
Yeah.
just imagine how many superhero costumes are just laying in the landfill. You
Yeah.
know,
I don't want to know.
so
Well, a whole bunch, a whole
a
bunch.
whole bunch.
I was thinking about this too because like we talked a bunch about thrifting at times, and I'm like, it. I think it's a poor use of thrifting. So you go to the thrift store and build a costume, but you're building a costume. To your point just now, like not an outfit you may
Yeah,
wear over and over and over again. So do you go back and redonate those clothes? So then, yeah, maybe like Goodwill or whoever you want thrifted
true.
at, like they get that transactional return, and that helps them promote and do more thrifting or recycling of threads. But at the same time, like it's still a single use. Like it just kills me. I can't think of a good way unless you're somehow repurposing some clothes that you're going to turn into rags or
Yeah,
like things you already own. And also like it's fun to dress up and it's
right.
fun to go all out. And sometimes I think the article you were reading like it involves like feathers and other plastic gadgetry that just has no place. And we've talked about the recycling and these plastic numbers. A lot of this stuff is if it's already wound up in one costume, I'm like, how do you
Hmm.
like unpackage and like will people do that, right? And
Right.
if it does get to the recycling center, does it get peeled apart? So that's why I think spooky sustainability, like this is spooky. Like Halloween is fun, but it's these costumes are spooky for
They
different
are.
sustainably spooky.
So yeah, we challenge everyone out there next year. Maybe you send it, or even this year, if you created your own costume and it's somewhat sustainable, like send us some pictures. We would love to see them, share them.
Yes,
Um, and it makes
please.
you get even more creative.
Please
So
tag us. I would love that. Well, speaking of another spooky topic is candy. I mean, we both reminisced on Halloween and candy, and
yep.
I mean, I eat my fair share, and we did post some live like Instagram and beyond. So I found this fascinating. Like I'll go into a little bit of the data that I went digging around. Is that the average American spends about $32 a year on, or will this next year on candy for Halloween. And if you look at like is it candy.com, it's a useful resource link. I'll have it what the actual it is. But they posted like the top 10 candies per state for Halloween, right? And across the board, Reese's peanut butter cups are, if not one, in the top three. Like
Yeah.
so millions, tens of millions of pounds of these. So if you just take those Reese's peanut butter cups as like a standard bearer for the waste on Halloween candy.
Yeah.
And I went and looked at Walmart. If you buy a pound and a half of Reese's peanut butter cups, that's about $32, give or take. So for the average American's going to spend $32 this year on Halloween candy. The average American likes Reese's peanut butter cups.
Yeah.
So they're going to buy a pound and a half of these, which is about 40 or so regular sized peanut butter cups in individual wrapping. And this is where I want to say caveat. When you think about safety and security of all of our kids and ourselves, candy needs to be wrapped individually. You need to know it's not tampered with and it's safe. I'm not going to get in the whole like hoopla of like all the freaked out frenzy in the 80s of like x-raying your candy. Like that stuff was ridiculous.
I remember.
But it's just, you want to know it's safe to consume, right? So that's like 40 wrappers of Reese's peanut butter cups times like 170 million Americans, right? Like that's an insane amount of wrappers. Like where does that go? I didn't even want to ask the robots to figure out like how many swimming pools would those wrappers fill compressed, you know? Because we all know we're guilty of like 40 to 50 of them ourselves. And I'll keep increasing because I may eat Reese's peanut butter cups more than the average American. But it's just like when you start doing some of that math and you know none of this is recyclable or even the parts that are recyclable is like getting to the recycling bin, you know, and just how hard it is to do that. And it's a little nutso. So like candy is probably, costumes are bad, like spooky, candy is just as bad.
Just as bad.
You know, like one of the articles we pulled from, I think, Fortune, so the average trick-or-treater generates about a pound of trash, plastic candy wrappers. But they do, you know, eco-friendly wrappers. I did like this, like the locally produced candy, like can you reduce your candy miles? You know, so so when you unpack some of like all the things that go into it, maybe the wrapper, having all those wrappers, not the end of the world. Some might biodegrade.
Yeah.
But how many miles did all that candy have to go? So like how much gasoline and like fuel had to be used to get candy from Hershey or wherever else produced and then shipped all over. So that may be like the biggest thing we can do, you know, math withstanding, is like just reduce the actual mileage on your candy. And can you buy local confectioners and fun stuff that are just as good as Reese's peanut butter cups? I don't know. What's your thought on that, Shane?
Well, first thing that comes to mind, this would be a good time to give a shout out to one of our favorite candy shops, Moose Candy in Louisville. You know, one thing that came to mind was also the production of, so like you could go and buy all of these candies year round. It's not like these are just specific to Halloween, but then there's the production of making it Halloween. So like creating the extra bags that it goes into. I think I was at Target the other day and they have a Halloween version of Twix that's green inside, and the cookie inside of the Twix is green, and it's specifically made for Halloween. So like beyond the wrappers and all that, just the production of making these specific Halloween candies, or like you might find a bat shaped Snickers, who knows, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just, I remember just having piles of wrappers as a kid, you know, and you never thought, as a kid, you never thought like, oh, like, is this recyclable? You just threw it in the trash. And it would be nice to see some of these larger companies create a more recyclable wrapper, eco-friendly wrappers, because the numbers you gave is just, it's pretty ridiculous. And it's also sad that the $32 for a pound and a half of Reese cups, when you can go and, you know, the average household probably needs, you know, ground beef before they need the Reese cups. And that's way more expensive, you know, to buy these Reese cups than it is some actual food.
Yeah. And I mean, this is what makes this whole episode really difficult, is it's spooky. And when you bring up ground beef, I don't know which one's worse for the environment. You know, a pound of Reese's peanut butter cups or a pound of ground beef. But
true.
I mean, a pound and a half is $32. So what is it, like about $20 a pound of Reese's peanut butter cups? That's $20 a pound. You know, we don't need that.
Crazy. So, yeah, I mean, there's really, I guess there's not much Crbnly we can say about the candy aspect, other than I do know some cities might have like a drop off zone where there's
Mhm.
some companies that will take your candy wrappers and discard it. I'm not sure exactly what the process is, but if you are looking for ways to be more Crbnly when it comes to the candy, you can maybe look into that, because unfortunately there aren't many eco-friendly options when it comes to the candy wrappers.
Yeah, safe and eco. And you don't want to be the person that's handing out apples
Yeah.
or toothbrushes,
Yep.
but that might actually be the solution.
Yep. And one of the last things that, signifies Halloween is pumpkins. I mean, it's the
The holy
logo you
pumpkin.
see everywhere. No one really cares about pumpkins all year round, but when it comes to
Really funny.
Halloween, you know, so literally around 1.4 billion pumpkins are produced for Halloween each year. Um, we won't even get into all of the water and all of the other things it takes to even grow those. Um, but around everyone buys them. You typically sit them out on your front porch for decoration. Some people like to carve, some people like to paint them. But the real question is, and where it really becomes effective, is how are you discarding of the pumpkins? Um, another one of my neighbors currently right now has 6 pumpkins on her porch, and they've been out for a week or so, and they're starting to look pretty bad. And I'm pretty sure she's just gonna throw them in the trash, and that's gonna get
Yeah.
mixed up in the landfill. But there are green options. So like around 60% of consumers that buy pumpkins to carve them don't end up eating the flesh. But there are options to actually lessen food waste with these. Um, are you a fan of pumpkin seeds, Chad? I know some people will
Um,
roast
yes
them
and
and
no. Like I like them in salads. I don't like to eat them like sunflower seeds. But
okay. I've
that is
never
one
I've
way to
never
do
tried
it.
it that way. Okay. And then also from some of the research we did, you can actually do like there's health benefits. So like you can make like a facial scrub
Yeah.
from the insides of the pumpkins, which sounds weird, but I'm sure there are a lot of benefits, because it's always weird when you're dipping your hand in or scooping out all the insides of the pumpkins. It gets real gooey.
Yeah.
But one thing that I highly recommend is if you don't have anywhere to like compost the pumpkins yourselves, one thing I recommend is, first of all, don't paint them. Carve instead of paint, because once you paint them, even if you have somewhere in your neighborhood where you can throw them in a compost, the paint is no good for the compost. So carving it definitely helps. And then also reach out to your local what is it, trash company
Waste
provider,
management companies.
waste
Yep.
management company. They may have an option. I've spoke about my local waste management company, Swaco, a few times on a couple episodes, and they actually just sent out an email to their customers of there's three different drop off zones that they have where you can drop off your used pumpkins once you're done, pumpkins and gourds, and then they'll get rid of them for you. So
I
it's a
think
big
that's the
help.
big Crbnly ask. Is like go out of your way to reduce food waste, i.e., pumpkin waste, by making sure the pumpkins end up somewhere where they can get composted and turned into something useful.
Yep.
Because adding them to the dump, the landfill, it's just going to add a whole bunch of other methane and other items not good for our environment. Um, and there's a lot of pumpkins that are produced
A
just
whole
to be
lot.
carved and thrown away.
And traveled.
I
Who
mean,
knows where they're coming from? I may even
yeah,
challenge myself to next year. I'm fortunate to have a backyard. I may challenge myself to grow my own pumpkins that I'll use from now on, to carve and set out as decorations. Um, do you have any? Have you ever grown any pumpkins? Like,
yeah. They just take a lot of space, in time because like you plant them early in the spring and they're really not ready until everything starts freezing. I mean, the other thing is my dad does, like my mom and dad, they're pretty carbonly in some ways. They've tried to grow pumpkins and squash every year and sell them. But the big competing thing is like you go to the local grocery store or the Walmart or wherever, and they're just way cheaper because they're buying them in volume. And, you know, not everyone will do that because I think there's something in that nostalgia of Halloween where you go to the local farmer or go to the local farmer's market, you know, and get these goodies, these fall harvest goodies. So there is that. Just interesting how that all kind of plays out.
Yeah. Well, we didn't mean to.
We don't have a good answer, listeners. Yeah. We don't have good answers to this.
Yeah, don't come here for answers. We just have information that we've read and examples that we personally want to try and live by. Definitely don't come here for any of true answers. You can kind of listen to us and make up your own answers. But
and then share them with us.
Yeah,
share them with us on Instagram. Reach out in our email. Just post them and tag us. We want to know.
Yep, and we hope that this episode didn't scare you too much with the spooky facts of Halloween, but we do hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing how everyone can be a little bit more carbonly during this this Halloween. So it was fun.
Kudos to that. With that, I'm going to try not to go buy some Reese's Peanut Butter Cups on clearance tomorrow.
That's on my mind. Oh, yeah. That's another good part of Halloween, but we'll save that for next year. The clearance candy.
Yeah. Have a good night, Shane.
You too.
Stay carbonly, y'all.